All right, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. If you've watched my channel in recent months, really, you've seen a lot of New Jersey-centric interviews. And if I'm going to continue in that direction, I had to do it properly, which meant I had to bring on the guest who's joining me for this conversation. It's a pure delight to welcome from Lunar Bear Ensemble and various other projects and histories, John Lunar Richey. John,
Thank
so
you.
nice to see you. Thank you for being here.
Same here, Joel. Very
Absolutely.
good.
So yeah, I knew you and knew of you certainly through your adventures in New Jersey, but you're actually joining me from Florida at the moment, right? You currently live down
Yeah,
there?
I live on a 5 acre like farm here. Yeah.
Cool, cool. How long have you been down there?
What happened was I was actually in Maine at a pot growing place, legal, and I was, it was a good cake job and all, but it kind of the partner started messing up, and at that same time, I got an offer to come here to a residency for writing.
Mhm.
So I came to the residency for writing, and I had a favorite bar that I would go to. And when the residency came to an end, I didn't want to go back up to Cold Maine. So I went to my favorite bar. And it just happened that I got there at the right time. And the woman who's Cece, she's a really cool lady. She's just like, my other bartender just left. So I walked right into a job.
Oh, cool.
And I stayed here. And I've been bopping around, and I found this beautiful little place here called Shady Oaks. And I live here.
Excellent.
It's nice.
Excellent. Yeah. I'm sure it's a change of pace from Maine and certainly a change of pace from New Brunswick.
Oh yeah, and I love New Brunswick. I lived there for so long, and then moved to New York. So this is totally different. My brother can't believe it. He goes, "From New York City, you're living on a farm. You got goats. I'm feeding it all." He cracks up.
Hey, man, I live in New Hampshire these days, but I grew up in Jersey, lived in LA, actually did the goat thing myself. My ex-wife and I used to have a 4 acre property up here, so we'd have chickens and goats and uh,
Great.
all kinds of, dogs. There's always like something happening up here. So I understand that life very well. And honestly, it took me about 10 years to get used to being up here. But now I was talking to my father earlier today. I don't think I'm in a hurry to leave at this point. I think I've finally settled into being in this environment. So I can certainly appreciate where you're coming from with that.
Oh yeah, and last a year ago in September, I was in New Jersey. I was performing with some members of Machine Gun, Jerome Parker Wells from New Brunswick, and Bob Muso. They're both from Machine Gun with me, and I was great to have them and two other people that are really, really good. There's a percussionist and Alan Gowa on drums, and the percussionist's name is I can't remember right now. Don't get mad at me, brother. I'm sorry, but it was a wonderful time. We just gelled so beautifully. And what I did was I did a lot of haikus. I did a haiku symphony.
Oh, wow.
That was pretty interesting. I told them what to play and how to change it, and and I just wait around in between haikus, and they would take it away and bring it back. It was wonderful.
Fantastic. So let's kind of take things back to the beginning of the history here. Um,
Okay.
and I know that I think most people who aren't from New Brunswick who may be watching this video would know you through Lunar Bear and playing with Martin Atkins and that greater world that Martin's a major part of. But you've also been an accomplished writer for a long time and a spoken word performer. What kind of came first for you, the music or the writing?
Oh, I never ever thought I would be in a band. It was never in the back of my mind even. I started out by just writing poetry and getting things published here and there. And a coworker I met, Richard Bear Graham,
Mhm.
Lunar Bear, he was a percussionist doing Afro-Brazilian stuff like the cuica, the berimbau, and he would play it. And he was also quite uh, knowledgeable. He turned me on to William Burroughs.
Mm.
He was the person that turned me on to William Burroughs and gave me books by him, including The Third Mind about cut-ups, which came in handy when I was in Machine Gun because that's what I did with Machine Gun. The other band I was in was Cut-Ups, nevertheless. So we would practice one day. He just said, let's practice. And we rehearsed and we went to New York. We did really good at the New Eurekan Poets Cafe, at the Life Cafe. And that was really good. And then we went to New Brunswick and we would open up for John Wayne. Do you remember John Wayne? That was a great band.
I've
William Pope and anyway, they were all good. I don't want to. Frank was a drummer. Anyway, they were like an amazing band. He would wear like a white pull-up suit, all with a zip. He would take it off and he would have a suit underneath it. And the band was really good. And this guy was so intense. And then he would take the suit off and he had a tutu underneath it. And he had a beard. He was a tough guy, and he would just boggle your mind, the idea, and I really liked them. And then that Frozen Concentrate came in, and I had a course with Tina Mashi on beatnik poetry in Douglas. I was in Livingston, but I took the course because it was about beatnik poetry, and also the teacher was a good guy. So I met Tina there, and she was in this great band called the Celibate Sluts. All girls. And the woman would wear, the leader was this woman, she was wild, Vanessa. She would wear a ripped up white wedding dress. She would get it, and stuff like that. And they were amazing. So anyway, I started going to Tina's with Bear in the basement, and we started to rehearse. And that's when I met, I already knew Slugger from the court. And that's when I always liked him. So he's been with me ever since. We've had a little, I don't know, brothers, but he's an amazing cat and a really good guitar player. So we had him playing more like punk, and Tina played more rhythmic. And then we had a conga player and Bear. So there was a lot of rhythm in it. And during that time also, um, I was in the Young Turks, and that was with Billy Snow. I don't know which one came. I think the Young Turks came first, but then that kept on getting elaborate. And then he went to England, but that band got really big. We had Stuart Grusin, Dave Grusin's son, playing keyboards with us. Very talented. And we were strong, and we put out a few singles. I had put out Scholastic Ambush and Cultured Mannequins on a 45 with them. And then I know what happened. Then they went to England. I started working with Tina, and we formed a good, solid band, and rehearsed every week. So same with the Young Turks. And then they went on tour. They put out this great album, and they went on tour. So I lost everyone, and except for Slugger and Bear. And everyone kind of liked it. And the weirdest thing is that I was always amazed. Like Eddie Freeze said he'd joined the band. He just signed with Geffen with Crossfire Choir.
Mm.
And so I was like, wow, Eddie's going to be in the band. So I said, okay, the guitar player now is gone, but we have a guitar player and keyboard player now. That's even better. And Eddie's a really good guy with us. So then we needed a bass player and a drummer. And one day in New Brunswick, it was snowing, it was cold, but it wasn't windy, and I wanted to go out. I lived in a little hovel studio, so I said, I got to get out. So I walked to the Court Tavern, and the only one there was Bobby and Martin. And I knew Martin. I had seen that show in Roseland, and I met him afterwards and said hi. And we knew each other, and he would come to my shows. So I was like, hey, Martin. So we're just buying beers for each other, being, nice out, and, talking to Bobby. And then he's like, hey, when are you guys going to play again? And I said, well, Martin, Tina's band is gone, and I need new members. We do have Eddie Freeze now, and we need a drummer and a bass player. And he goes, I'll play drums. And I said, Martin, we've had a few pints here, and, this is unbelievable. I mean, what a drummer.
Mm.
So I said, you know what? I was thinking ahead. I go, I'll call you tomorrow just to make sure, Martin. and let's have a drink or two. And I really, really appreciate it. So the next morning, I waited till around 10:30. Didn't want to wake him up. I don't know what time he called him up, and he's like, "Yeah, John, I'll play." Anyway, I gawked at the phone. I couldn't believe it, and I said, "Okay." Then we got the bass player, Tom Diello. We did the rehearsals at the Rubber Room, and we had heard about this guy in Belmar who was in the psychedelic mopeds or something like that. And damn, that guy was good. He did circles around everybody else. So at the end of the night, we all knew it was him. He could do anything, and he was adapting, and he was smart. And we're like, wow, and he was clicking. So that's how it all started. And we would rehearse, rehearse, rehearse. And I was still pursuing writing. So I went out to California during this time, and I was going to go to the university somewhere in Los Angeles. And I had a meeting with the guy in charge of the English department, but he split. I went all the way from New Jersey to there, and he had something else and left me without stranded. Didn't tell. So I'm stranded, and I wanted to study there because Hubert Selby taught there.
Mm. Hmm.
Last Exit to Brooklyn,
Right.
all this great stuff. The one about the junkies, what was it? Requiem for a Dream.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Unbelievable writer, and I love his writing. So I went there to meet. I was going to study with him and John Richey, Cities of the Night. They both were professors there. Cities of the Night was like the outlaw homosexual, very mind blowing book when it came out. So I was like, wow. And I liked that book too. It was really well written. So it ended up that I was lost there and I was with a friend. So we noticed Henry Rollins was doing a spoken word, and it was one of the first ones he ever did. And it was in his hometown of Venice.
Hmm.
So it was a little spot. And we went there, we saw him. He was very good. And just for the heck of it, I had a light windbreaker, but it was a raincoat because it never rains in California. So I wore it. And I had a little button, Lydia Lunch on it. And I was walking by him and I said, "Hey, man, that was good." And he goes, "Hey, yeah, I know her." I said, "I know." And then we started talking. And I said, "I'm in a band. And I have, he said he was coming to New Brunswick. I mean, to New Jersey, Trenton. I said, "I have a band. You could play with us." So we're at Rutgers. And I was like enthusiastic. And he's kind of looking at me, but he gave me his number. And I'm kind of like a nobody. So I went back and I told the band what happened. And they're like, "Hmm." I said, "I call and he's not answering." Martin said, "I'll try." And I thought that was a great idea because I'm a nobody. Martin's a Martin. He's like, killer drummer. Everyone knows who Martin is. So I said, "Okay, I'm cool with that." And he set it all up after that. I didn't have to do anything. I was like, "Martin, that was great." So we had a wonderful show with him. That was our first show at the Court Tavern.
That's the show that Martin paid him $60 to do, I believe he said when he did the interview.
Yeah, that was the first spoken word tour he did, and that was a lot of money back then, I think, for just getting up for a little while and rapping, especially if he's doing a tour around the nation. All he needs is a driver.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty cool by him, and he was really good. and but in between all that though, I was getting the reason I got into Young Turks is because the Aquarian was publishing my poems,
Mm.
like 2 or 3 pages. They're like, I was like, holy cow. And I met Billy Snow at a party, graduation party, and Erin was there. That was his girlfriend. And she introduced me, and he goes, "I've been making copies of your poetry and dropping it around in the bars." I'm like, wow. And the next thing you know, he's, "You want to be in my band?" And I was like, well, I've never been in a band, and I wasn't. And he had a room where So anyway, while I was in his band, everyone was wondering what he was doing, or maybe he had one single out already. So Tony Shanahan left. Now he's with Patti Smith. But
Hmm.
we played together, and he left for this band called the Boogles. I think the drummer left then too. So we had to get. I said, "You sure you should have? Maybe you should have do this. Have me come in." And he goes, "No, no, I like this idea." So he got Bill Clark and Wally Bird, who was a very good drummer who was studying to be a lawyer, and he is now. And they lived in the same building, so it was so easy. I went to their apartment instead of having a roommate. He paid for that room to be a practice studio. So that's how that started. It all because of that. And then I always pursued the writing. Then I became the editor of the poetry editor of East Coast Rocker and Soho Arts Weekly,
Mm.
which was amazing because I interviewed John Giorno. I don't know if you know him, the poets. He's William Burroughs and all of. And then I interviewed Lydia Lunch, and that was they both were amazing. They were both at their houses. He
Mm.
had a John Giorno lived at the old YMCA on the Bowery, and the bunker it was called. And William Burroughs lived right across, and he had a painting by William Burroughs that was shot up with bullets holding it in glass. And I was like, wow. And he had a little studio. And then when I saw Lydia, I think she was living there totally illegal. I saw an apartment building. I'm ringing the doorbell. Nothing's happening. So I go, does anyone named Lydia live here? They go, and go, I never heard of her. And I said, okay. And I walked out, and here she was in a black dress and this looking beautiful in this other place that I thought was totally abandoned, dusty and all. So she let me in, and there was a black cat, but there was a big black curtain, and you opened it up, and all it was a bathroom and a nice big bed with posts and a nice little alcove where you could sit. And we had an interview there, but the funniest thing about that interview is she goes, I have to take this phone call. I said, okay. So I'm pulling out my shit, getting ready. And I decided to show her my book. And I showed her The Demon by Hubert Selby Jr. And she's sitting there and I mean, unbeknownst to me, she picks up her book. She's reading It's the Last Exit to Brooklyn. So we looked at each other like, wow, this is going to be a good interview. And
Yeah.
it was very good. And anyway, that's all was part of my writing and pursuing that.
Yeah. And
And
mentioning Selby, I'm glad you mentioned Selby. I'm a wild Selby fan. Um,
uh,
Not only his books, which are, but just his as an interviewee and his philosophy and how he saw the world, I think was obviously very interesting and very different. Even the way he wrote was not conventional by any means.
yeah, you know what he did? He listened to classical music. And if there was changes, he would like click, click, and make spaces while he was listening to classical music. Machine Gun, I asked permission. We used one of his blurbs from one of the cassettes, but I had told Henry where he was. Henry didn't know that Hubert Selby was right in his hometown, and he became friends with him. I
Yeah.
said, I'm here to see Selby, and it didn't work out. So I'm glad I saw you. And he goes, Selby? You mean, and I go, yeah, he's right at that college. And he's like, oh. And then he somehow connected with him.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I love all the connections that happen like that.
I mean that's kind of my experience too, doing not only this, but the other stuff I've done. The Martin example being a brilliant one. I met Martin on the street in New Orleans when I was 15 years old, after a Pigface show. I was
Wow.
I was on vacation with my family. I was already way into all that stuff. Killing Joke was my favorite band since I was like in grade school. So I'm walking down somewhere in the French Quarter, just on vacation, family vacation to New Orleans. And I pass a record store, and there's a big poster in the window for that evening's Pigface show at the New Orleans Music Hall, February of 1993. I'm like, well, and they're selling tickets at the store I just happened to pass. I'm like, I can't pass
Great.
this. So my father, I was 15. My father let me go alone, bless him, and put me in a cab, to get to the venue, and hung out. And after the show, Martin was, Martin's a very accessible person,
Oh yeah.
and he was just out in the street, and I started talking to him, and you know what? We've kept that conversation going 31 years. We're still having it, you know.
That's great.
Same thing with Rollins. I mean, Rollins gets a bad rap for being unapproachable. I've had the opposite experience with him for years. If you got a reason to talk to Henry, and if you have a reason to interact with him, that's not BS, which I'm sure he gets a lot of. But if you're talking to him about music or something that would pique his interest, he's all in. And he's always been that way, Last time I talked to him in person was he was in New Hampshire doing a spoken word show. And I had a podcast years ago, and I had just interviewed a friend of his from DC, Brendan from Fugazi. So I burned a CD of that radio show and gave it to him. He's like, "Oh, that," and he immediately got into talking about DC hardcore. And he's like, "Have you heard this band yet? Have you
Wow.
got this record yet? You need to get this record." And here's a band that you may not know from that era that if you like this, you're gonna love this. That's Henry. And I'm buddies with Bob Burt, who plays the drums for Lydia, so I've run into her. You're exactly right. The world is an incredibly small place, and the more you're into any sort of artistic endeavor, it just becomes microscopic. Everybody knows everybody else, and
Yeah,
it's
and it seems like you're supposed to. Like it's the universe is opening it up that way and saying,
right,
I just say yes to the universe all the time. I mean, like the people I've played with blow me away, and all I do is go, okay, and I wonder, and I go, am I competent enough to be with these people? Like Lance Carter as well as Martin Atkins. He was playing with Cassandra Wilson and Sonny Chirac. When
right,
Lan when so when when Martin blew off into Chicago and did some really good stuff there, we needed a drummer, and sure enough, I used to see. He used when I bartended at the Court. He would come in on Fridays after work, and we would talk all the time. And then he would invite me to see Sonny Chirac, and Sonny Chirac was so approachable and so nice. It was unbelievable. I mean, I'd go see him at the Knitting Factory a lot, and he was just an amazing guy. And I couldn't believe him. I was in awe, And then there, Lance is banging away. So, you know, uh, he ended up being the drummer. I asked him, and he said yes. Once again, I would go out in a like surprise and horror. I'm like, oh my God, he's so good. But that's the way it goes. I've been blessed
yeah.
totally.
And going back,
Slugger has been a blessing. He has actually been, a lot of times my right arm man because he's never left, and you know he's a very committed guy.
yeah.
A little angry at times, but committed. He would
Well,
know that himself.
uh, even the point you made earlier about Martin just coming out and saying, "I'll play drums for you," that's so quintessentially Martin Atkins. Um, I've known him a long time, and the thing I've always appreciated about Martin is you very rarely hear the word no out of him, and if you do, there's a damn good reason. Like, okay, there's already 46 members of Pigface on stage. We can't bring on somebody else, that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
his philosophy, I think he would agree with this. I know he's going to be watching. Hello, Martin. Um, if you say no to something, you know what you're going to get, which is going to be nothing, right? But if you say yes, you don't know what's going to happen. And sometimes
Exactly.
the thing you don't know that's going to happen, will change everything, so it's worthwhile to say yes to things, because you don't know where that's going to lead. So, and he's always had the attitude. It's like, yeah, we'll do this. Let's do that.
Oh,
You want to come play drums?
we came up with so many great good ideas. The Court Tavern became sort of like our home. We had the woman Ellen LaForge, I think her name is, from John Wayne. She was studying at Mason Groves. She was doing movies. We had to project movies on us. We all wore white, like smocks and all, and it was put white in the background. And one time, this was a really good thing, and Martin was just moving with it. We were going to do Fuck Factory because we always did the same stuff. And I have a book called Fuck Factory, a story. It's published and all, and it's about working in a no-tell motel and then finding a trap door with all this crazy stuff you go down into it. And it was coming together. We had Martin came up with we had black lights because our sound man Pat Ryan had these black lights he could get a hold of. Martin goes, I'm gonna go get something. And he got these white because they had a backdrop in the Court Tavern, a really nice painting. So he got these panels and it was all white. So it looked totally different than the usual. And we had neon lights. So I got neon glow chalk. I mean, uh, whatever it was. But so we started and Martin comes on, everyone's playing. Martin goes up and he writes Fuck Factory. And it's shining. And we were ready. And I started doing stuff and other people would take a break and the whole thing got decorated while we were playing this whole stories and all. It was wonderful. I mean, I'm a writer and I like stories and these guys were amazing. It was, you know, that was an amazing show.
Absolutely. I want to go back just for a moment because you mentioned a couple of times the Young Turks. I want to bring this up, and my filter is going to uncooperate as usual. But this is a tape I was looking for something else the other day, and I found this in the apartment. This is a Jersey Beat compilation called Suburban Uprising. It's from 1985. Well, it says
Bruce Delancey.
copyright 84, 85, so I'm assuming that's when it was done. But let me read some of the bands here. The side A is the pop side, side B is the punk side. So you've got on the first side, New Breed, Young Turks, Frozen Concentrate, Bandables,
Wow.
Big Vacation, Tiny Lights, Mob Fun,
Oh,
Windbreaker,
highlights.
Altar Boys, and In Color. That's side one. Side two is AOD, Lord John, Swingers, Pleased Youth, Sacred Denial, Disturbed, Love Pushers, Das Damen, The Skulls, and the Punsters.
Wow.
Yeah. So talk about a time capsule. So I want to make sure I flashed this on the screen during the conversation, and I got it at a flea
Yeah.
market for $2. It says there.
Good deal.
It's probably like a
Yeah.
$1,000 on eBay considering who's on it, but got this in the
Mm.
90s, a long time ago. So I wanted to mention that because w- just the list of those bands kind of makes the point I'm about to make about New Brunswick in that I was a little late to the party. I was born in 77, so I didn't start hitting clubs, and they had to be all ages, obviously, at that time. But I was hitting clubs like early 90s. Didn't actually start playing the court until like the mid 2000s when I moved back from LA. Paul from AOD was doing some benefit shows around that time, and two of the bands I was in played one show, respectively, for him. But going back to New Brunswick musically, I mean, talk about a vibrant scene of stellar players, eclectic music. I mean, it ran the gamut from, the AOD Pleased Youth stuff,
Oh, yeah.
all that stuff that people know. And then you get into the stuff you were doing and the Smithereens and, another name that, from that era may not be exclusively Court Tavern, but another band that was around that time that doesn't get a lot of mention, the Mad Daddies, you know, um, just
Oh, man.
just a lot of cool stuff happening in that era, so what do you think it was about New Brunswick that sort of served as a magnet for all these different people who were coming in and doing all this fun stuff?
It seemed that a lot of the bands played with other people, and they all were. There wasn't that much competition. As Bobby Albert said, it was the most incestuous town because everyone played with everybody else, and everyone was welcome to play with everybody else, and that was an amazing part. It was a very, uh, that community was more like, let's go, let's do this, and no one was like, everyone was in every other. And that time, I also had, gone to Livingston, studied with Larry Ridley jazz, and when I was in college, right before then I got out and I met all these people. But while I was there, I met Bob Musso and Thomas Chapin, and I ended up, and Bob Musso calls me up. He's been the engineer for like 30 years or so for Bill Laswell,
Mm,
all those albums, and
yeah.
he recorded Tom Waits' Rain Dogs,
Mm.
and you know, Actually, he probably recorded the whole thing and then a little tweaking here and there. And Tom Waits said he did the whole thing. Nevertheless, he has a really good ear for recording, and he was. But he called me up and said, "Oh, we played at the Pyramid, and Thomas Chapin is an amazing sax player and flute player." I said, "Why didn't you tell me?" He goes, "Well, I'm telling you now. We're wondering if you'd like to be in our band." Now, here's the connection. He wants me to do cut-ups. I already read this book by William Burroughs and everything, so I know exactly what he's talking about. Doing musical cut-ups. So I had three tapes and a board, and I had I was doing cut-ups. The first place we ever played was CBGB's. We opened up for Living Color.
Mm.
And I was like, holy cow. And we had Sonny Chirac on with us. Now, the stage was vibrating. Everything was going. I jumped off the stage for a while. And that's a pretty high stage, but I jumped off it just because I had to watch Sonny Chirac. I watched him on the side. And meanwhile, Bob Muse was playing. He's like, get back on. So I got back on stage and I did my cut-ups and all, but that was the my initiation to the band. It was like, whew. And
And
then we put out three albums.
that was Machine Gun, right?
Yeah, we put out three albums, and that and we recorded it. And Sonny Chirac played with us again at the garage at the gas station in New York City.
Oh,
It was like a, you know where it was?
oh yeah.
It was it was a structure, and they had all that stuff in there and all. Yeah, he played with us there. And that night, I really surprised him because I was using a TV too. You know, I had a little yellow TV with a tin foil on it, and I had it over here on the side. And it was 11 o'clock, and I said, "Oh, perfect! It's the news." All I had to do was go 2, 4, 7, and I was making a collage. Like, you know, the news was getting all mixed up, cut up, cut up, cut up, and it was like, and it was coming along really good. And Sonny's playing. He just looked over and smiled. He was like, "Wow, who would think of that?" I thought, and I was like, "It's just blessed." There I was, Sonny. You know, played with Miles Davis on Jack Johnson's album. Didn't
Yeah.
get the credit he deserved, but that's him playing the guitar. And then Miles made him audition and he refused. He goes, "You know how I play." He goes, "I'm trying to imitate his voice and being a little mad, but didn't get it." Nevertheless, he said, you know how I play. And I'm not going to do the audition. I wish he did, but because Miles was that attitude, I guess, that you had to like bow down and audition again.
Right.
Anyway, oh, and he played really good with the flute player too. He's on that album where he ripped it all up after they had recorded the album. He played, and his guitar was just like out there. Oh, as a matter of fact, Thurston Moore has a cassette of all weird stuff. He recorded all the weird stuff that Sonny did for him to tell, so he knew how to do some of that stuff. But anyway, that was a blessing, and that means that while I was in this record, we had a record deal. I never signed anything. It was always been handshakes with Bob. So I felt my friend. I used to do stuff with him in outside of New Brunswick in a biker bar when he was in a band called the Backdoor Men, just making good money while I was in college doing, covers. And then he would do this thing, and Menasha, who ended up marrying Jerry Garcia, she would come on and I would go on and we would read poetry.
Mm.
I remember being at the biker bar. It's right near Route 1 in Edison. And all of a sudden I'm reading, and this guy comes, there's a lot of bikes there. One of the bikers comes running and yelling at me on the side, and I look at the band, and I go, "Well, this might be it." And he comes up and he goes, "Fucking great poem, motherfucker." And I'm like, "Thought he was gonna punch me." But things like that happen, and I was just and that's how I know Bob. Solid dude. So to get to the reason I'm getting to that is because Lunar Bear Ensemble had made a recording in New York City. I raised the money, and it was enough for one day. We
Mm.
recorded that album in one day. And the last piece with the Barenbow, I thought it was perfect. We were so tired. You got to get up early. You got to get driving there. You got to set up the drums and everything. And then hours go by, and then you do it, and then you keep on going. But I was a little tired. And when Baron said, "I don't like that. I got to do it again," I stumbled, but I said, let's do it. I let's just stop. I can't go any further. One day was just blowing my head. I was like, but it was amazing. And our band would learn things like that. And we never really recorded. We would just go back next week and hone in on it like, again, and maybe it would change a little bit and then hone in it again. It would change again until we had it the way it was supposed to be. And that was amazing. It got to the point, and Martin was so funny about it, where I would test them. I would like to bring a guest on that would just alter the thing of the dynamics because you had to be more alert and live. It wasn't like, we got this, you got to listen again. And so I used to give these things like a brand new poem, and they never rehearsed it before. And there we were playing it. And the band would be like, it would be like, okay. So I would give these little things like, there's an aqua sky and a bullet coming through, and it shatters into something else. And that was just, I gave them like images. And that was what they're going to play, even though they didn't know my words. And then it got to the point where Martin, he cracked me up. He'd be like, so, Lunar, what is this aqua blue sky? Bullet explodes. And we would just laugh. And I go, you got it. And we would start it. But it was just a good way to keep us fresh
Mm.
and on our toes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, Lunar Bear Ensemble was also on the first ever Invisible Records release, which Martin and I spoke about at length, the one that came in the shopping bag. And
Oh,
um,
yeah.
so Martin was, you and Martin and Lunar Bear Ensemble were very interconnected at that point as far as getting, what became his label going, and a couple hundred releases, later, it definitely had a life of its own there for quite a few years. Um, Now there's also Lunar Ensemble, which came later, right? That was,
Well, what happened was Bear fell in love. He was in New Brunswick with this woman, and he decided, I'm going to go move and teach percussion and go down to Alabama.
mm,
Well, there goes that. And people like one of the guys from the New Breed, as a matter of fact, came up and he's like, "Hey, where's Bear?" And that happened twice or something. And I said to the band, I go, "Look," and I told Bear, I said, "We got people are asking for Bear. We're falsely advertising." And so it had to be Lunar Ensemble, but and that gave us a lot of freedom. And Bob Muzo put out our record. He put it on cassette, uh, CD, and album. And he had a great distribution by then because he had put out he was putting out avant-garde stuff with Bill Laswell. He had his own label, and it was Rollins. So we went to this place, Tower Records, the whole band, and everyone thought we're going to meet this guy Pierre. Bring your artwork and everything. So we go into this big room and we're talking, and everything is going good, I think. But I knew something was wrong. It was during the time of MTV, and look, cerebral palsy. I never think about it, but I do when people remind me, and I knew it. I knew that bothered him because he liked the band, but it was just too much for him. And I, I mean, he's a young A&R guy. He was probably afraid he didn't have the backbone. I should have said one thing, and I regret I didn't. That would have been his name was Pierre. Pierre, I can see what you're thinking, but tell you what, the band never thinks that way. And not only that, if you give us one album like this album and give us a chance for another one, and you give us a couple good, opening acts, we'll show you, we'll kick ass. And anyway, he ended up sending me back the artwork. A week later, I got the artwork back. But as we left, Eddie Freeze, who signed with Geffen, we're walking out the streets of New York, and he's like, "John," and he had his cowboy hat on. And he goes, "John, we got it. This is it. We got a deal." And I had to tell everybody I was pretty much disheartened. And I just said, "Guys, I got the artwork back." And Bob Musa got really pissed. So he goes, "I know it's an avant-garde state label, but I'm putting it out."
mm.
So he put it out. He had all those things set up, and he was. So I said, okay. And he even sent it to Japan. And later on, he goes, John, come on in. We got to celebrate. I go, what? He goes, just come on in. So I came into New York City, had a really nice little condo. He's, you know, deserved it. He worked so hard, and it was a beautiful place with a view. But we're having a couple of drinks, and he goes, look. And I got a royalty check from Japan, commercial radio. They played on toy, they loved on toy dogs. And he's like, now, John, you guys got to go to Japan, And I'm like, that makes total sense, Bob. But a lot of these guys, like me, Martin, and Eddie, were more free. The bass player and Slugger married, responsibilities. I knew it wasn't going to happen. I knew they couldn't get away. They'd lose their jobs, and he had a good job. They both did, and so be it. That passed, but I kind of regret I didn't just go alone and read poetry and try to like stir up a little more. I could have done that, but yeah, it's just a miracle how all that happened. Because I never ever, especially when I talk about the cerebral poetry, I never ever thought I would be in a band ever. It was not in my no one's. I just wanted to be like Richard Brodigan, just in the background writing. Not even in the forefront like Allen Ginsberg or anybody. Just writing these really good stories, and that was my vision of what was going to happen. Nothing like
Well,
that.
you're speaking to the choir, my friend, as you know. So, you know,
Yep.
a writer with cerebral palsy who never expected to be a musician. That sounds vaguely familiar to me. And
We
we both
both have
with
cerebral
Martin
palsy,
Atkins.
brother.
There you go.
And we both play with Martin Atkins,
Yeah. Yeah. Who would
as
have
well
thought?
as that other woman. That other woman plays too, and she's quite handicapped, and she kicks butt. Um, can't remember her name now, but
Uh,
she's with Big Face too.
Oh, Galen Lee.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Galen's wonderful. She's been on the channel. I love Galen. She outclasses everybody else who's been in Big Face, and I can say that with confidence. And I'm sure anybody from the band who's watching that statement will nod. Um, Talk about being graced with true presence and a true talent. You know, Pig Face is Pig Face. We're at the House of Blues. Martin asked me to come back. He brought a bunch of people back for the 25th anniversary. So there's like 45 of us. And everybody's black, wearing black. They got the leathers and the eyeliner and very aggro and very fucking industrial, right?
Yes, I know where you're going. I know where you're going.
Clear the stage, Galen comes out, and everybody is a mess. Everybody's crying, Yeah, 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 real tough industrial people, And to see her sound check at the House of Blues to an empty room. I got there early. It was my wife and I at the time. Our friend flew out with us to Chicago, and maybe like four or five other people. And it was Galen sound checking in that big open room. And man, to this day, that was the most extraordinary moment I've had as just not only just as a music fan, but as a musician, as a band person, to be in that room and seeing her all alone with a little spotlight on her doing her thing, is nobody had met her yet except for Martin and a couple like road people. Like, oh yeah, Galen's here. Who's Galen? And here out goes Galen, and we're just like, oh. And then, you know, Martin, Steve Silver. I know people are going to be watching this. They're going to be thinking like, yeah, because everybody was just falling to pieces watching Galen Lee. So yeah, I mean, look, we all find our way. If we hang in there long enough and just hold your nose and jump. That's the lesson. You stay true to what you want to do creatively. You don't give a shit about all the things that some people pursue, the fame, the riches. Fuck it. Do it because you have to do it because you have no other choice. And if you live your life
If
that
you
way,
love it.
you're gonna find the
Yeah.
right people. The right people will find you. The right people look at you and go,
Yeah.
I
The
get
doors aren't going to open unless you go walking down the hall, and you
right.
have to walk the hall and get down to that door or the doors. Yeah, I hear you, bro.
Yeah.
I hear you totally.
And that's exactly
That's
what,
what I believe in.
yeah. Yeah. Never be afraid to ask. And what's the worst that someone's going to tell you? No. Okay. Well, you get a 50-50 shot the next time you ask for, something from somebody. You're going to hear yes eventually, So uh, don't stop asking. It's the people who are afraid of asking and, like you at the bar with Martin, want to do this. You have to
Why
ask.
didn't he ask me? And I was like, I
Yeah.
was shocked because I had already seen him play at Roseland and he blew me away, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, but Galen's amazing, man. I mean, if you ever get, because she basically lives on the road. I mean, she tours nonstop. If she comes down
Wow.
your way, you've got to see that show for sure.
Oh, I will. I would like to meet her too.
Yeah, she's awesome. So you have the album, the Lunar Bear Ensemble album with Martin. Um, if I remember correctly, that was recorded around 88, released around 90. you know, Martin
Yeah.
splits. He goes off to do the ministry thing and all that. He's out in
God
Chicago.
bless him. That was great. I saw the ministry show with the fence. That was amazing. I
Mm.
went to say hi to Martin and I had to leave. I was with Bob Musso, but it was so packed in New York with so many people. I was just like, hey, Martin, great show. I'll see you later, my friend. And I just left.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah.
He
Ministry.
understood.
They were just amazing at that time with that lineup.
You're not kidding.
With Bill Rieflin and Martin on drums, William Tucker, another New Brunswick connection. William
Oh,
Tucker
man.
on guitar. Um,
Scornflakes. Woo.
oh
I
yeah,
don't know if you remember that band.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
That had, what's his name? The bass player.
Andrew.
They, yeah, Andrew Weiss and Tim Kaine.
Yeah.
There was a trio.
Yeah, they ended up
And
playing with Henry and the Rollins band for many years. Those two. Yeah. Yeah, Andrew's something else, man. Martin brought him in 2019 when Pigface did the last tour. I played with him
uh
in New York and I show up at the venue. I'm talking to Martin. He's like, "Oh yeah, we've got Andrew Weiss on bass tonight." And Andrew hadn't played in Pigface for like 27 years or something crazy like that. Didn't know any of the songs, but played the entire set. It's like, don't worry about it.
that's,
It's Andrew
yeah,
Weiss.
he
Come on.
knew he could do it. Yep.
Again,
He could fall right into it.
a lot of that talent, man. That New Jersey. People know the big names in Jersey. They know the Springsteens, the Bon Jovis, the Misfits, all that. But there are so many, many bands. All genres. Every city had its own scene. And I think people kind of forget that. You know, there's as much going on in Newark as there was in New Brunswick back then, or Clifton or Passaic, and the Jersey Shore had their whole thing, that whole, monster magnet thing happening in the
Uh,
80s and,
yeah,
God,
before they were that, before that, they were shrapnel,
yep,
some of the band. And that's a great story. Remember when Elvis Costello did that New York 2 or 3 shows every night and just Friday and Saturday and then Sunday matinee, he just played everywhere. Well, he played at the one that had the lizard on the top, the country western place. What was Lone something? Well, I was at that show and all the seats were taken. I got there a little late, so I just got pushed up right to the front. I'm like, man, oh man, I like this. And Shrapnel opened up with their army helmets on, and they had sandbags all along and that's the first time I saw them. I said, oh, I like these guys.
yeah,
They were, they were in your face, and you
oh yeah,
loved it, and they were good.
yeah, yeah. I've had Phil from Shrapnel on the channel. He's done a video with me and really cool guy. Still down in Red Bank. That scene is still going on. But that then again, you mentioned that whole scene, and there are people down the Jersey Shore who had stuff going on in the mid to late 80s and earlier. Jack O'Monahan at the Brighton Bar comes
Yep.
to mind. Chris Berry, promoter down there, lovely guy, got my band in the Stone Pony, you know. just so much, it's such a rich history. That's why I like to grab all you guys to come on, to tell me a little bit about how it all kind of came together, because I had to learn about it secondhand because I was too young in those days. I had my time a little later in the 90s with the whole like pipeline Newark thing. Um, but so Lunar Bear, eventually, am I correct that the band kind of ran its course like early to mid 90s? Do I have that correct?
Yeah, that's when it changed to Lunar Ensemble, which is now anyone I play with. Bob Muso puts it out. I have a lot of things out on, you can get it elsewhere, like computer things, but he's been putting out a lot of my stuff. One of them I liked a lot. Well, Sim Kane played with me for a while, and Peter Myers, and um, some really nice people. And it was always really a treat to play. In Asbury Park, that was a lot. I used to play the Saint a lot.
Mm, yeah, that was always a
And and that guy started out in New Brunswick. I think he started out by having concerts up in an attic before he started the Saint.
hmm.
He's a music lover, doing good. But yeah, those were really good times. And now, whenever I do anything, like when I did it with Bob Muso and Jerome Parker Wells on bass, and can't remember, I'm trying to remember. He was in False Virgins, the drummer. He was in my band at the New Eureka Poets Cafe, but he heard that we were playing, and I didn't know we needed a drummer. So he goes, "I play percussion," and I said, "You're in, brother," because he knew everyone, and we were all like, "Hey." I'm sorry, I could see his face. I could see him playing with False Virgins. I could see him playing with Robin Renee in her band, but I just cannot remember his name, and he's probably going to shoot me for it. But no, he doesn't have a gun. I hope. No, but he's a wonderful, wonderful percussionist. And we were like a family when I get together with anybody like that. I want to get together again with Slugger because we're in Florida, but he's so busy and he's for it. I was playing for a while with these jazz people in Melbourne, which is more like a city. And I was thinking about organizing stuff, but I just don't have it in me anymore. But if I could get together with Slugger, I was going to have Slugger come on and play too and make it a little more livelier and more punky jazz. But he couldn't, he tried, he couldn't make it. But we keep in touch.
Cool. I saw in 2007 the Lunar Bear Ensemble reunion show at the court. Um,
It was a hot day, I remember.
yeah, that was Martin was in town because he had his art show in the city and his book had just come out. And
That book, yeah, I know that book was amazing.
I
The
helped edit
writings,
that book. Yeah. So
wow.
I met up with him. I hadn't seen him for a while. I met up with him in New York at the art show. Then I went down to the court to see Lunar Bear, which is the first time I had seen the band. The only time I'd seen the band live actually was that evening at the court. Um, Fantastic performance. I mean, um, that version of Bleeding Liberal is, it's still in my head all the time. It's like an earworm that doesn't go away all these years later. Fantastic set. Was that everybody from the old days on stage? I know obviously Martin came back and did that show. I know Doug was there. Um,
Yeah, it was the guy from the Wooden Soldiers, Greg D. Wooden Soldiers and some other band, something with drugs. It was a funny name, but he was with us. Good guitar player, and our other drummer played. He's a multi-talented. He played guitar too, and then we had Slugger because we didn't know the drummer. We didn't want to leave him out because Martin was drumming. So he said, "I'll play a little rhythm." I said, "Yeah, you get on stage." Oh yeah, and that show also. Remember who was on the left? That was sitting down playing the cornet. That was Dave Dryowitz from
mm,
Ween. And he also there was the first time I have one now, but he played the theremin. I got a theremin now, but he played the theremin for a while there too. And Danny Shop put out a really good book of poems, and I was blessed. he put in a poem where we're included in it
Mm,
because of that night. And I jumped off the stage and I was sitting standing next to him watching the band, and he mentions that, because Daddy was cool, man. I just said hi and all, but yeah, so he wrote a nice poem about that night, about us getting old too.
mm. That was a
Yeah, it's funny.
that was a great show.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm really happy to have gone to that. That was a lot of fun.
Playing with it, I love. I never thought I'd do it, but I love to get to play. I love the way the stage shakes and you feel the vibes of everything, all the musicians. And it's funny to say that because Lance Carter, we did a benefit for the Bullet Space in the Lower East Side. They needed a roof. And they had a stage where after every song, he had to reach over and pull all the drums back because it was a really weird stage. And they just kept on wandering away from him. It was pretty funny. Yeah, those were the days. I would like to do some more music, but it's in a different. I want to do something different. I don't know what yet.
When was the
Pardon
last
me?
time Lunar Bear or Lunar Bear Ensemble or Lunar Ensemble for that matter performed live? But was it the 2017 reunion or has there been stuff after that?
Oh well, Lunar Ensemble played. We did well, Lunar Ensemble just keeps on continuing. If I do something, it becomes Lunar Ensemble. But we've had some really good ones in the Knitting Factory and at the New Eureka Poets Cafe. And then, you know, things happen. Doug concentrated more on his music, and I had, I just kept on circulating with guests like Jack Petroselli, who now plays with Patti Smith and Dave Dreiwitz and Robert Muso. All of them are very close and dear, so it's always been really easy. We did a piece at the Roxy where we all wore our pants, but then we took them off and we had bathing suits on. We had these blown up beach balls, and I was talking about needles on the beach and had this whole elaborate story. And then we kicked these beach balls and they're bouncing on the Roxy. That was a pretty funny show. And Dave Dreiwitz played trumpet with pocket trumpet, and Andrew, the drummer from Tiny Lights, he played. See, I like to have wonderful people that are guests. He played percussion, and that was really beautiful. And sax, I do believe. Yeah, I know he plays sax, but that that was a interesting night. I can only remember parts of it.
I would love to see or hear or both, anything you've got going on down the line. You know.
I'll try to send you some stuff then. I'll like work on that. I know that Cliff did, and you got a good package there.
Oh, good God. Yes, I have I think they sent me like 10 different CDs going back to like the 80s. Um
I
T-shirt,
know.
single, it's pretty fabulous.
Yeah, my friend Todd Chaffee's on one of those albums you got. He was very experimental, weird, and he was with Cliff and Cowra for something. I forget the name of it now. It's very weird name.
Oh, is it Dolphin Room? Is that the one?
Oh no, no, not Dolphin Room. They have a weird face on it too. Um,
I know what you're referring to. Why is the name escaping me? It starts with a P, I believe, right?
it's a very long, weird name that yeah, and I have a very good vocabulary, and I had to look that word up. I was like, what's this? No, was it? No, maybe I'm making a mistake. Was it paradoxical?
Uh, I should know this since I just had him on.
I,
It's
well, don't.
oh, sorry, Cliff. Sorry, IB
Yeah.
Cara. I have the CD.
Sorry, Bob Ramos. Like, sorry, Bob Ramos, for forgetting your name as a great percussionist. I got it.
It came back. It came back. Yeah, it's always a joy learning about the history of things. And it's also really inspiring to know that so many people are still doing things, from 40 years ago. It never left them. you know.
There's no reason to leave if you love what you're doing. I mean, that's and part of that is the creation of what you're doing with other people, and it's communion. It's just a commune vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. I haven't asked you this yet, so I need to. Where did the name Lunar come from for you as a moniker?
Well, I've always been so connected with the moon. It was unbelievable. I didn't understand it, but I was, as a young person, I was quite aware that the moon was pulling, and I could feel it. And I started writing, and I just liked the name, like Madonna liked her name, and Man Ray, or it doesn't matter, but I just liked the name better than John. There's so many Johns. They flocked 42nd Street. I don't know how many Johns were there, and then then you got the toilets, and then you got so many Johns spelled Jon and John and Jonathan's. I just said, oh, I need a different. I don't like that name,
Hmm.
so I changed it.
The first time I saw your name was on a Pigface album, actually.
Oh yeah, Notes from the Underground.
Yeah, he had written a.
Yeah, me and Martin have stayed in touch, and that was a long time he was gone, but he just called me up and said, "Send me some poems, John. I'm going to put one in on the album." And it was so nice to see my name on the back with all these people like Flea and I'm like, wow, and Andrew Weiss. And I do believe, yeah, the guy from the Swans
Michael
played
Gerard.
on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love the Swans, man. That
Yeah,
was amazing.
that's the album where like everybody's on. Like, I mean, that's probably the biggest Pigface lineup on a studio album. Genesis P-Orridge is on that record. Joel
Mm,
Gausten is on that record.
I love Genesis, man.
Oh yeah.
I ran into him with Dave Clark from the False Virgins. He was writing for Screw. He became the big editor for Screw. He had a regular job in writing about pharmacy stuff. Couldn't take it, so he started writing for Screw. Instead, he was so much happier and going to all these weird events and all. So yeah, I went to this art photography exhibit of people, and there was a whole bunch of different stuff. Mapplethorpe was in it, and all these other people. It's in some townhouse, and that's when I met Genesis. What happened was I was with a friend of mine, and my shoe was untied, and she bent down to tie my shoe, and she was dressed really like, well, she was a dominatrix and a good friend of mine. So she was, and he's drawn to that. I mean, so he came and introduced himself, and then we hung out for a while. And he was going to take a whole bunch of ecstasy and see these two dominatrix. That's when I say goodbye to him. But then I ran into him a couple of times. The last time was at a kinky place, and this was after I performed with him and Pigface at the Bowery Ballroom
Mm.
with Jared. I love Jared. Jared would stay with me when he came back from England, and so you know I performed there, and I forgot where I'm going, and so oh yeah, I performed there, and I was Genesis. And when I met Genesis the last time, he sat down on this little bench with me, and his beautiful wife was there, Jay,
Yeah. Yeah.
and she was just so nice. I was like, "Would you like to sit down, and I'll give you the seat?" She's like, "No." She just smiled, and I didn't. I do believe that she. I know she was a nurse, but I do believe she worked with handicapped people.
Mm.
And guess what Sonny Chirac did when he was retired, semi-retired? He was a bus driver for handicapped kids. And then here I am. He's getting off the stage at CBGB's and Living Colors going on. He's got his guitar and he's looking and it's high and he's got gray hair. He's dressed really nice. So it's just so funny how this happened. They had those metal chairs a little bit with the padding on the front and the back. I turned it around and I kicked it and it went shh, and the back hit the stage and that was a step and it was all I needed. And I helped him down. I said, "Here, let me have your guitar." I put it under my arm and he went, I said, "I got it tight, but not too tight. And I couldn't do nothing to the neck. Come on down." And I handed him back his black guild. And then we became friends. When I was at the Knitting Factory one time, everyone partied in one room and he had his own room where he didn't. And Lance came in, he goes, "John, um, Sonny wants you to meet his daughter. Go on in there. And that was so nice. He wanted me to meet his daughter and said hi and all. But what a nice guy. I mean, I'm blessed. I mean, I never wanted to do this. I, I did want to do it, but I never foresaw it. I never dreamed it. I never, you know, it happened. It's crazy.
That's so cool. I mean, it's amazing to cross paths with people like Genesis, you know. I mean, I was a young kid really into Throbbing Gristle and the whole, philosophy and fascinating bunch of people Genesis was, you know. And I interviewed, it was after, he had become more of a she, but I'd interviewed Jen for hours one night, hours. And I published like a three-part written Q&A on my website. And that was only about half of the conversation because it was just voluminous. Going full circle again, I was talking to Martin because Martin's got the museum out in Chicago and he has like a Genesis wing kind of area. So I was talking to him after our conversation, the interview. I said, "Look, I've got hours of unheard Jen in my apartment. Why don't I digitize it and like you can put it in like a listening room area, and
Nice. Yeah.
add that because talk about a storyteller, sharp, probably one of the sharpest people I've ever talked to,
That's
Jen.
why it was amazing to sit on that little bench with just me and him.
Yeah,
Gene Tennessee was with me and he sat on the floor. You know Gene Tennessee?
I
He was
don't.
kind of like annoying. He put out Dangerous Rhythms, that really cool fanzine, and he also had a show on RSU called Dangerous Rhythms. And it was and at noon when he was on, he would always play something connected with Lydia Lunch because it was lunchtime.
Okay.
He put out a lot of very good. I wrote for his fanzine, Dangerous Rhythms. It's some of them are very very expensive now.
Mm,
They were very amazing magazines, fanzines.
yeah. Well, that's a
But
lot in and of itself, isn't it?
yeah.
Fanzines.
Oh man, we did a thing at we were in the sleaze factor or something like that at the Mother. We did a Mother show. I did one where I read. I had my roommate Shani was an amazing dancer and very very feline like and sexy, and Gene got leopard skin pants. I gave him, I didn't even know he had them, but he got ready for the outfit for the Mother, and he wheeled out the. I gave him my mixer, and what me and Gene did, we did three stories on RSU where he would read the stories, and then I would go on RSU. We wouldn't even introduce me. It would be playing music, and then I'd come on and then play music again. And he had carts and cassettes, and he had it all lined up to cover like the whole story, and they were all very erotic. So I asked him to play all three, like a cut up. So this is what we did. Everyone's got photography, and everything's all wild, and there's a lot of like amazing sexuality expressed. And then I come on, and I walk on, sit down on a metal chair, and go, like, oh God, this thing's gonna be boring as hell. And I could hear the moaning. I'm just as happy as can be because that's the ground I laid. And I'm like, okay. And then I start reading, and then all of a sudden he wheels this table out with all and then he hits one, and then there's two voices playing and something in the background. And then he brings up the other one. Now there's three voices, including mine. And then he brings out the last one we did on RSU. Now there's four voices playing. And I'm reading, and everything's erotic, and it's going all over the place like a mixture. And people are catching this and catching that. And then Shani came out, and she came out hardly dressed, high heels, black, and it was planned. She throws me off the chair. She has a whip, and it was just too funny. And and I dropped my pants. No one saw anything in the front, but I let her hit a couple times with something that was just soft and didn't hurt, but it made a loud noise. And then she drags me off stage and she banged the wall, and I'm going, ah. Well, Chichi Valente liked it so much, she asked me to come back the next night because it was a double thing with different people. I was like, yeah, that was a wonderful time because people were like, oh boy, they're like, what the heck? And then Shanny comes on, uh, and the music and everything else is playing too. My voices are still going on while Shanny's, taking over the situation. It
Mm,
was a wonderful event.
mm. Yeah, I
There ain't
love,
not many places like Mother anymore. Ooh. Did you ever go there?
I missed it, unfortunately. Yeah, I didn't get,
It was there in the 90s and all, but it was three floors. And like one time I was heading my way and I even had heard a voice, but I could have touched him. But it was Mick Jagger. He was leaving. And I heard, I hear that voice and you go, I know that voice. There he was. He was in a limousine and he had a bodyguard and he was on his way out. He was leaving Mother. But it had a lot of great events. And it had a camera and it said, warning, this camera is filming in the bathroom. And it had a couch in front of it on the second floor. It was big. And you could just sit on the couch and watch who was in the bathroom. Nevertheless, someone was giving someone a blowjob in there, and we're all sitting on the couch watching. It was crazy. That's
well, I
that's a
mean,
connection with me. Me and Genesis had a little bit of a connection with that kind of crazy stuff.
yeah,
I like that. I mean, he knew, he was something. Oh,
yeah.
when I went to the Andy Warhol Museum, the third floor or the fourth floor of the bank is all about someone that might know Andy Warhol. So
Hmm.
I go there and I'm going through and I could take the elevator to the floor and I was going to walk down and it's Genesis. They had a whole bunch of the artwork of him transforming
Yeah,
with Jane and Jane getting her nose fixed and he's getting his nose fixed the same way. And they start to try to look identical.
yeah.
That was something else. But I mean, there's always those connections where you don't expect it. A Genesis here, cool.
Well, I
You
remember
know,
I, I was talking to her about influences, and we were talking about psychic TV and some of the thoughts behind that whole endearing project. And I said, let me go out on a limb here. I'm gonna mention two bands that I suspect were major influences on you. And he's like, and I never read about this in any books or anything, about Jen. I just said, well, I'm gonna take a wild guess. You really like Hawkwind and you really like Funkadelic. And you know how Jen talked. She was like, "Oh, we're gonna get along just fine." She's like, "That's exactly it. You got it." I said, "Funkadelic and Hawkwind. You put that together, you have psychic TV." And she was like, "Yes, somebody find." Yeah. Do you remember that place in the city, Don Hills? Remember that club?
oh yeah, yeah, I do.
I was for a 10-year period, I was on and off with this band called The Undead. He used to play the Court Tavern, actually, Bobby Steele from the
I
Miss.
know. I probably saw you play.
And the night with Jane County, were you at that show? Um,
Oh wow, no, I wasn't at that show. I know that wasn't at the court.
yeah, well, I did play the court with Bobby, but we played at
No, that was at, but then no, that was at Don Hills. Is what I'm saying is because that's where Jane would be playing.
yeah, yeah, and
Wow,
Jane had brought back a couple of the electric chairs that night, so it was kind of a thing.
wow.
Like, it was a big deal, and we were the
Oh
opening
yeah.
act. It was just us and Jane, and Jane's an interesting lady. There's some funny backstage stories I could share, but won't on this channel. Um, but I'm playing, and I see like this rather short um woman with big hoop earrings. I think maybe wearing an SS hat, standing next to this gorgeous, stunning blonde woman. And the shorter of the two smiled, and all I see are two rows of gold teeth. And I'm like, it's fucking Genesis P-Orridge and Lady J. Like just from the stage, I'm like, fucking Genesis P-Orridge, hard to miss. And I,
Without a doubt.
and then years later we had this epic conversation, but that's what it is, man. You put yourself in the right rooms, you're going to meet the right people. That's just the equation. It always is.
He
But,
was like a shamanistic prankster.
mm,
Uh, he was something else.
I mean, what fascinated you'll know where I'm going with when I mention this. You'd have a conversation with Jen and you'd mention something, like a little morsel of information or a fact about something. And then you would change the subject, and Jen would go for 20 minutes on whatever topic you had just brought up, but then turn it around and bring it back to that morsel you mentioned several minutes before, you know. Talk about an astute, somebody who is really paying attention to what you were saying and can take you on these journeys. Like interviewing Jen was fascinating because she would just kind of take you on these epic journeys to the answer. And you'd always walk away and go, wow, that was really impressive. The fact that she was able to kind of take your mind and kind of swim through it while she's answering and kind of seeing what you're thinking and how she could react to that. Um, Next level intellect for sure. There are certain people, when you live your life that way, there are people who will become your supporters and there are people who will become your detractors. And I know, you know, Jen lived a life that inspired very polarizing opinions. And that's par for the course. But my experience was always very positive. I wish I had more,
Oh, me too.
you know.
I was just, that's another one where I'm like, holy cow, I can't believe Jen and I are talking and hanging out. And, you know, it was 3 floors where I was sitting at a little bench and there was a lot of things going on. And I just couldn't believe that we sat and actually talked. I mean, really talking. He asked pertinent questions and I mean, I was like, wow, he really wants to get to know me and I want to get to know him. And there's Lady J just watching us, smiling.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely an irreplaceable force, you know.
Yeah,
Um, but just intellectually switched on. Just,
yeah, I
obviously
know.
obviously well read, obviously learned, smart person.
And
Uh
Kenny kept on learning. He wasn't one of the. I mean, he wanted to know stuff. He was just, a searcher, learning. I mean, some people just stop at a certain point. He was just go and go, go.
yeah, yeah. So, I'm grateful for that encounter. Again, another thing, you're doing music and art. You're going to find your tribe or tribes somehow, some way. The connections will be made just by being in the room. And, obviously a lot of those connections come through, Pig Face. That's a very easy and beautiful way to make connections because you're in a room with 50 people you don't know. And you're playing a 3 hour set with people you don't know, and suddenly you're friends because you just made it through this 3 hour set with no idea what you're doing, but somehow it all kind of makes sense. So, that's a beautiful thing for sure. So it's always nice to make the world a bit smaller. That's why I wanted to have you on to have a
Thanks.
conversation. We have a lot of, obviously some mutual friends and logistically some mutual history. So it's been an absolute pleasure. Um,
Same
where
here.
where can people keep track of what you're up to creatively and otherwise these days?
Well, I, I've been painting. These paintings are behind me, for instance, but I've been painting now. And that's what happened was in this Fellsmere, I didn't have a good Wi-Fi connection where I was at first. And the plague came and they said, you're not going anywhere for a while. So I bought all these art supplies and I started painting and it just took over.
Hmm,
I even had a gallery exhibit in Sebastian. I was like, wow.
that's really cool. How long ago was that?
The exhibit was about 6 months ago.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Sebastian. It was a nice gallery. It was a nice time. opening was really nice. A lot of nice people showed up.
Very cool. Very cool.
So I guess I'm a painter more, but I do when I paint, I do paint haikus a lot too. And well, there's things like I did abandonment in New York City at really at a parking lot, really huge. I wrote abandonment, and now I have a little painting of that, which came out really nice. But it was mint green, abandoned mint, and and I left Bob Muso's house. I went immediately to a right around the corner. When you walked out was a pearl paint. I got all these spray paints, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. I did it in New Brunswick a lot too. I did so I did Alienation before that movie came out and all that, playing with the words capital A and a capital N. That was mainly I loved doing stuff like that, but that also Peter Hunt helped me with that because he put together one of my he did the cover for my record 45 and stuff like that. He's a really good talented artist. But you know, I'm just straying. I think I had enough. I think I'm getting tired, Joel.
No worries, man. Well, it's
But I
been
can't even. I'm trying to think if I forgot anything. And no, I guess you could just go. Oh, Bob Muso. Get on any of my recordings, and there's plenty. There's over like 20, I believe. Different places, live things, other things, and that's all there. Easy to find. You just look it up. And Machine Gun as well, because that's Bob's label.
oh cool. Yeah, I will put links in the video description too for people to check this stuff out. Um highly
And
recommend.
I have 3 books on Amazon.
I'll absolutely link to that stuff as well. And I gotta get some of that. I gotta check those out. I need
You
to.
know what? I'm going to send you some of the books. You'll like them.
Oh, please. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah.
The other stuff, if I have a hard copy, do you have Lunar Bear Ensemble?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I only have one left. I was going to give it to you if you didn't.
Oh, I appreciate
I
that.
mean, I mean, one sealed left. That's all.
Oh, wow.
And I'll see what else I could find. There's a couple Lunar Ensembles. Bob did put out another Lunar Ensemble.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, I love the band, and it's great that I've had now 3 members of the group on this channel talking about it. And it's I love the fact, like I said, people are still active, people are still doing things. Doug's stuff that, he played me some stuff.
Oh, his new stuff sounds wonderful.
Yeah, I mean that
He's
stuff is
recording it all by himself at his house.
yeah.
And he did that one with Danny from Sienna Man. Sienna Man.
Yes. Yes. Oh,
I
here's my
like I
chance.
like Danny.
Here's my chance to do another PSA whenever his name comes up. Danny, come on my show. Answer my texts. Okay, now we're good. We're good.
He was, oh man, he used to crack me out. Always, he's so smart.
And I'm only kidding. Danny and I have been in touch, and we've been discussing a time frame to make something happen. So I'm sure when the
Good.
time's right, he's going to come on as well. That is something that we're thinking about. So um,
I can still see the picture of the cover of their album. It's just some reason it's just sticks with you. That's good.
and that's a band that, because there's a lot of people, especially these days, who are, old school hardcore and, old school punk, and s that's the band to listen to. I mean, talk about you can't get more intense than Cyanamid, you know,
Oh,
for that era, you know.
I know.
Talk about just forget it. So hopefully, we'll make something work and Danny will come on and I can put him in the hot seat for an hour or so and get that history. So hopefully that will happen. But
Cool.
listen, John, I know we've been planning this for a bit, so I appreciate you coming on, being a part of my history here on the channel. And I've
Well, like
always
Cliff and Karen said, just to interrupt you, now someone has documented my life a little bit. Thank you, Joel. That's what Cliff and Kara said too. Now somebody knows a little bit more about me because I there's no biography about me. You, the man.
Well,
I'm the silent.
as I said, John, I'll put links up in the video description of the music, of the books, so people can check out this stuff. I'd recommend it. I haven't experienced it all yet. I look forward to experiencing as much as I can.
You got to give me your mailing address after this. Send it to me.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that, man. It's going to be great. But what I have experienced so far has really been fantastic, and yeah, I just really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story, and I hope this is the first of, many non-Facebook conversations we have.
Yeah, I hope I run into you sometime. I hope I get up to if I get up to New Jersey and New York, I will let you know.
Yeah,
If you come
please.
to Florida ever, let me know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hit New Jersey somewhat regularly, because I'm from there. I still have ties. So every couple months at least, I try to spend a few days down there. So if you do make it up that way, we'll have to do that.
That's a good midway.
Maybe we'll
Water,
find a
yeah.
studio, make some noise together while we're at it.
Oh, now we're talking.
There you
Let's
go.
do that.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
let's get some other people together.
Yes.
And we'll jam and make something happen. I
I
like that a lot.
I would love that. And I've got access to a really great studio up in northern Jersey. I record drum tracks at now and then. So we'll definitely keep that in mind.
Okay, Joel, it's a pleasure and thank you for inviting me on your show. Thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you, sir. Appreciate it.